Om Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachu Brahm Jyotisham Jyoti Tadyadatma Vidho Vidduhu. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, ever pure and free of all taint. The essence in all beings and all things, which all beings seek either knowingly or unknowingly, there shines Brahman. It is that which the Guru teaches. It is that which the wise ones exult in. Om peace, peace, peace. Om mano na buddhi na shariram indriyam tanmatram bhutani na puttapanchakam aham kritas chapi vyat swarupakam tamisham atmanam upuiti shashvatam. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. That one attains to the Supreme Self, the Atman, who dissolves mind, intelligence, senses, body, elements, and the ego into the Atman, the Supreme Self of mankind. Om Sahana Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. On a very beautiful day here on the big island of Hawaii at the SRV Association's chapter in the Pacific Ocean, we welcome all of you. I'll have to salute you all across the way because this is probably more people than I've ever had in my class in Hawaii. Vedanta being rather new to the Hawaiian Islands and to the world, relatively speaking. But of the 14 or so of you that have gathered today, and also to those live streaming audience that have tuned in from the mainland, as we call it, here in the islands, also from Europe, I know a few people are watching, and from India. So we welcome you all here to the fourth and final class. It's a conclusion to what we're calling Yoga Vasistha at a glimpse. And my quip for that is that we're getting a third eye full when we take a glimpse at Yoga Vasistha. He's got so much to teach, even though he's thousands and thousands of years old. Of course he's eternal, as all of us are, and everything is. If you follow the Vedanta teachings, you'll know that the two-word mantra is everything is, or sarvosmi, all is. There's no such thing as nothing, because there's always someone there to witness the nothingness, which is a good thing to do, whether you're Vedantist or Buddhist, is to look into that nothingness after you strip everything else away and find it to be not really empty ultimately, but full. One of our peace chants in Sanskrit relates that. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. They say Purna many times in that chant, and that means full. So Shunyata is emptiness, Purnyata is fullness, and they both go together very well, as we have seen in Lord Vasishtha's yoga, when he's talked about beings who seek the formless. And this is no strange topic to any Hindu fold, because Sri Krishna takes it up in the Gita. He talks about it in terms of my manifested state, which is called the Praryastika body. Lord Vasishtha has a teaching on that, which we'll take up today. And my unmanifested state, which is everything inside. That is, there's the outside and there's the inside. Inside is all mind, basically the territories of the mind, in which you have subtle senses in there, and you have subtle elements. And then he says there's my supremely unmanifested state. So he talks about the manifested state as the Praryastika body, or eightfold body, a very simple rendering of basically ego, mind, and intelligence with the five senses. And you could throw the body in there if you want, incidentally. It's very typical of Vedanta. Just throw the physical body in there too, because it has to be considered. Give it just its due, they say. So that's called an eightfold body. So we have that teaching. But as I was saying, Sri Krishna takes up those teachings also in the Bhagavad Gita. So hard to tell who is first in history, Sri Krishna or Lord Vasishtha, because Vasishtha is one of the 10 mind-born sons of Lord Brahma. Remember, we don't want to confuse Lord Brahma with Brahman. Lord Brahma is one of the Trinity, and Brahman is the ultimate reality, our word for Almighty Father or Allah, or Buddha nature, if you will, in Vedanta. But Lord Brahma is one of the Trinity, and they're the first on the scene as far as name and form is concerned in the Hindu way of thinking, philosophical way of thinking. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So Brahma used to be called the creator. We've replaced that with the projector. It's more philosophically sound, and we want to be philosophically correct. Especially when we're finding out it's really not possible to be politically correct anymore. And it's very difficult to be correct in any way, but philosophically correct, we want to try and keep that sacrosanct. So we have to make sure we call the firstborn form the projector, because he's going to, via the power of sankalpa, and we looked at that teaching twice in the last 2 classes, the power of the mind to project. All of this has come into being. All of the 24 cosmic principles, if you want to look at Lord Kapila's system of Samkhya, all of the 12 spandhas, if you want to look at Shaivism system, and many other systems, Praryastika body and so forth, the way they express the trickle-down process from that great mind all the way down to the element earth, which is as far out as you can get as far as Hindu philosophy is concerned. You cannot go any further, which is why if you start taking a particle of the element earth and examining it, you're not going any further inward. You're taking the most external particle and you're looking at the internal of the most external particle, as quantum physics is doing, and finding nothingness there. Finding what the Buddhists concluded to be shunyata a long time ago, before electron microscopes were created. You're actually looking at the what the Buddhists would call, and the Vedantists would concur, the emptiness of all objects, which is why you should give them up. Christ called it building your house on sand. So sand is particles, you see. So there's nothing substantial here in the world of name and form. It gets more and more substantial as you move to the kingdoms of heaven within you. And if you move beyond them even more and more substantial, you're getting towards that essential light of consciousness. And according to Lord Vasishtha, he likes to call that Atma Gyan. And when you get close to it, you gain a special knowledge, a special Gyanam of your own true nature, Atma Gyan. And that's the most important thing in his path. I wouldn't say that at all that devotion is not in his path, because He's one of the 10 mind-born sons. 10 Manus are called, the 10 great minds. And they're a solar line. They've come from the sun. That is, not just the sun in the sky, but where this sun has come from are these inner suns, this great sun of wisdom, which is not is made of physical fire, but it's made of the word. And this is why we call Lord Brahma the projector, because from that word he'll take and project things along with his Shakti. Do you know who Lord Brahma's Shakti is?
Lakshmi?
Close. Saraswati. Yeah. And if you go to the next, Vishnu, then you'll find Lakshmi more, or they sometimes call her Narayani. But Brahma has Saraswati, and she's known as to be the goddess of the word. So this great word is her garden. You see, her liquid garden, as it were, of liquid essence or intelligence. And in the Rig Veda, just like in Genesis and so forth, she breathes on the water. Your god or goddess breathes on the water, and it causes waves, and these waves are the first beginnings of vibration. And the whole universe is made on vibration, all the way down to the gross vibration here of physical particles, all changing at a billionth of a second. Along the way, some wool has been pulled over our eyes, you see, some ruse has been committed. And the Indian philosophers called seers were very careful to point that out. The queen of all four-letter words, I've called it before, Maya. There's been no other religion or philosophy in the history of our world that has actually pinpointed and put a name on what confuses us and what flummoxes us, what drives us into delusion. See, Maya. The world of name and form and time and space based in causation. Those 5 things. We know everything is based on 5s. Important quintuplication process, they call it. So everything that is solidifying and liquefying and so forth is a sleight of hand, if you want to call it that, by this great magician called Maya. Now, the young Shri Raama has fallen under a little bit of tendril of Maya. He's an avatar who has not been discovered yet. He's about to come into himself and become the great Shri Ramchandra, who is the predecessor to Shri Krishna in the line of avatars in India. So he's still a young lad, and he's destined to regain his full realization in front of thousands of people, you see, in that particular age. So when he does gain that full realization, it will affect the most amount of people. Divine Mother has this all set up well before his birth. Just like all the sequences of Christ's life were set up well before his birth. He knew his destiny when he was a boy too. You see. That's why he left home. Where have you gone, my son? Where else should I go? I have to be about my father's business, you see. So when he was just a young teenager, about probably the age of Ram, he also left his parents and left home. So this has all been set up by whom we would call Mahamaya, it's the Divine Mother of the universe. And so Vasishtha, being this mind-born son of Lord Brahma, is party or privy to this. In Hawaii here we would call that akamai. He's akamai to these inner subtle truths. You see, that's a Hawaiian word. So you have to be in the know, you see. And on earth at the time when Ram was born, only 12 rishis in the whole subcontinent of India, Mahabharat they called it, knew, or Bharatavarsha sometimes they call it, knew that Ram was an avatar. All the other wisdom knowers of the time didn't know the avatar had been born yet on earth. See, because there are whole collections of souls who wait for this divine descent. And they will come into the body themselves if he does, see, or she does. In the case of Holy Mother, for instance, Shisharda Devi, in this age, Kali Yuga. So, with these souls waiting on this divine descent and its awakening, see, you've got these great rishis, Vasishtha was one of these, who knew what was going to be transpiring here in the spiritual realm. In the first class 4 weeks ago, I think it was, I read you that story about Ram giving his discourse of divine discontent, where he read the riot act on everything in Maya. And he read it so profoundly and in such a deep, sincere way that beings in the next realm showered flowers on him. So he's standing in a hall with all these people, because they all met in King Dasaratha's hall to discuss divinity every night. And we meet once a week here, so every night they go, and before the sun sets, and when the sun comes up, they're still talking about God, basically, talking about divine things. Dharma, you see. So that after Ram said his piece about suffering in the world, then the Siddhas and the Munis in the next realm showered flowers from another ether. Like, just imagine coming down out of the sky right now, but appearing out of nowhere, a whole bunch of flowers started falling on us. Well, that started happening. And it wasn't a great surprise to King Dasaratha and his pundits and his priests and so forth, because back then they knew their ancestors were like that with them, you see. They didn't believe in just one world like we do nowadays, right? There are many worlds, the kingdoms of heaven within. They knew that all of these existed like little Russian dolls inside of one another. Sometimes I have a chart on that. You see, 5 little Russian dolls all packed by inside of each other. All you have to do is pull them out, you see. And that's why everything is. That's why everything exists. That nothing is not. There's no such thing as nothing. Because everything just goes inside and comes out. And in fact, when you know this, it's a great secret, but it also begins to become a kind of problem. See? So when you become akamai of cycles, that doesn't mean, oh, I know the truth, now I'm free. It means, how do I get off the cycle? That's a second and more profound realization. And a lot of people don't want off the cycle. See? They're not seeing it like Ram's seeing it when he goes outside of his father's castle and sees suffering, and sees people lost in suffering for many lifetimes, hundreds of lifetimes. They're lost in suffering. So they don't have that insight, you see, to see that and to see how desirable it would be to get off of cycles of birth and death. Mentioning Holy Mother, my Guru's Guru, Sri Sharda Devi, she said that once. She said, birth and death are very painful. May you never have to come back here again. Now, I never heard another woman teacher say that, you see, in my life. I've seen many so-called women teachers, but she was the one that I felt was telling me the truth, you see. May you never have to come back here again. Now, think of all the different religious traditions of the world, and just like India gave you this concept of Maya, or let's call it a principle of Maya, she also gave you this knowledge that cycles are to be transcended, you see. That heaven isn't the highest station, that heaven is also a world. And that's where your ancestors are, and you've been going back and forth and around with them for a long time. And 550 years before Christ, Buddha came to break that cycle. He sat under the bo tree for so many days until he finally saw a way out of the recycling of plants, animals, humans, insects, and ancestors. See, different life forms. You can take different bodies. Krishna says that in the Gita. There are many wombs to take here, Arjuna. Sleepy wombs, restless wombs, wombs with a view. I know you felt that coming. That would be a sattvic womb, you see. Basically is that you have a more conscious set of parents, and you actually recognize them before you get born, and you choose them, you see. Oh, I think there they are. If I have to be born, I want to be born with them, because they'll keep the Dharma alive in me. Because this Maya is no joke, even for an enlightened soul. It's preponderant, it's heavy, it's weighty, it's easy to get off the razor's-edged path. You see. Utistata jagrata prapya varani bodhata ksharasya dharanishita and so forth. Basically, approach the wise teachers and learn from them, arise and awake, stop not till the goal is reached, because sharp as a razor's edge is the spiritual path, and difficult to navigate. This is all out of the Upanishads. So, Vasishtha, one of the 10 mind-born sons, these 10 mind-born sons have all come out of Lord Brahma, the projector. And Vishnu is then the preserver, and Shiva is the destroyer. We're going to call him the dissolver, because destruction doesn't happen either. Creation and destruction don't really happen. The way I've explained that earlier is that you've got creation, preservation, and destruction going around in the cycle here inside of these two hands, like a tempest in a teacup. See? So billions and billions of souls cycling and nothing's happening because these two hands are sustaining the whole thing. These are the hands of Mahamaya. These are the hands of Mahashakti. These are the hands of the Divine Mother of the Universe. It's her creation. These are her worlds, you see. And she's got them in hand. Pun intended, you see. Literally and figuratively, she's got them. She's watching them appear and disappear, and nothing is happening as they do. No birth, no death. Life isn't even happening. There's just eternal life. So birth, life, and death is triputi, is illusory. It's a dream. Row, row, row your boat through it, and so forth. But eternal life, that's what they seek. And that's what Lord Vasishtha has as his own possession. He has it in spades, and he has it so deeply that when Lord Brahma asks him one day to come into his presence, and he puts his hand on him and pronounces a Mayic curse on Vasishtha, and Vasishtha immediately loses his knowledge of the Atman, Atmagan, and starts to feel horrible, you see. And he's confused, he doesn't know what's going on, or what's happening to him, and he asks his father to bring him out of this to lift this curse that was put on him. So Lord Brahma asked him a few questions while he's in the state, and then he lifts the curse. And Vasishtha says, "Why did you do that to me? I felt as if I was dying. See, I lost everything I knew." And Lord Brahma says, "Because you're destined in your next birth to go down to earth, you have to know how they feel there." See, this is how they feel: lost, confused, dazed. Not just lost in suffering, some of them are lost in pleasure. See? Wealth. They think everything's okay. Actually, the ones that are suffering, you probably can reach them, but you won't be able to reach these ones that are lost in riches, you see. And Christ found that out later too. Give up all your riches and follow me, but the rich man couldn't do it. So, easier for a camel to get through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to get to heaven. See? So, Vasishtha is poised there in that yuga with King Dasaratha as his main priest, and the young Ram has fallen into this peak, you see. Doesn't know why people suffer. So he's got this little tendril of Maya in him. Vasishtha starts lifting that. Now, this has all been is sort of a preamble of our first three classes. Yoga Vasistha at a glimpse, or at a glance. But we found out in the last three classes that there's some signature teachings that Vasishtha is well known for. And some of those are, one of those is Sankalpa, this idea that the cosmic mind projects worlds of name and form and time and space at many different levels. From, you could say, if you want to condense it nicely, just the three worlds. You could put it into 7 if you want to, the 7 lokas. But if you want to put it simply, there's a transcendent world, there's an inner world, and there's an outer world. Call it gross, subtle, and causal is my favorite way of putting it, because the Advaitists would call it that. And they'd made it up with your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state. Your gross state is waking, your subtle state is dreaming, and your deep sleep state is causal. You see. In other words, everything out here is caused by your deep sleep state. Why? Because all the seeds for all of this are in your deep sleep state. So if you want to go to the kingdoms of heaven within, or if you want to know the truth, you can't go outward into matter, you see, like we're trying to do. Outer space or outer particles, that's not going to work. It hasn't worked for millennia. It never will work. Those are outward going people who believe in the senses, and they're materialists. The truth has only ever been found by people who move inside. See? And as they move inside, they jump these three worlds. And you do it every 24 hours. That's the strange thing here about Maya, you see. So we do it every 24 hours, but we don't come back with very much, you see. We never come back out of deep sleep with the knowledge that all the seeds for this lie in our deep sleep state, eternally. And to get out of the cycle of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep would be to know those seeds and use them. That is, Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, if you strew paddy, you all know what paddy is, right? Rice seed. See, if you strew paddy around before the rainy season and you come back, then there's a riot of growth, right? But if you cook that paddy seed over the fire for just a few minutes or even less and strew it and come back, nothing, you see, no growth. So if you don't want this world of name and form and time and space based in causation called Maya to grow, you burn the seeds over the fire of knowledge. This is Sri Ramakrishna's analogy. And then you don't have to be born again. Now, Vasishtha was born again. So what about that, you see? So there are some souls who can be born without being born. This is the Advaitic way of saying it. There is no birth, life, and death. They know it. So when they come into the body, they know that this is just a projection. Vasishtha should know that better than anyone, right? Because his father is the king of projection. See, Lord Brahma is the projector. He is the cosmic mind. And he projects all the worlds. The metaphor for that is this 1,000-petal lotus he sits on. Silver lotus, you see. Each one of those petals he sits in the middle of is a world. So he sees them all, you see. He's four-faced, by the way, you see. Four-faced means Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and so forth. He's got the four Vedas as his head, you see. All the knowledge of the Vedas is in him. So he's looking at all, in all directions at all time. The four directions or the 8 directions, however you want to say it. There's even slokas about it. Agnir Morta Chakshushi Chandra Suryao Vishaha Shrotrivag Vivitasha Vedaha Vayu Prana Hridaya Vishvamata Padbhyam Prathivihi Sarvabhutan Toratman. You see, it says basically that one indeterminable consciousness is the indwelling awareness in all things and all beings. Fire is his head, the sun and moon are his 2 eyes. The revelation of Scripture is his cosmic mind. The 4 directions are his arms and legs. The universe is his heart. Wind is his breath. Music is his voice. And from his feet the earth is originated. See? That's how they explain it in the Vedas, in the Upanishads. They weren't just wisdom knowers, they also had a poetic, artistic slant, you see. They knew that this great wisdom had to be attended with something that would inspire you, like poetry or music. So you might as well be describing the firstborn when you say that. Fire is his head, that's that sun that I was talking about, you see. And the sun and moon are his 2 eyes. So everything here is lit up in the daytime by the sun and by the evening by the moon. And that light is allowing all beings to see, all beings to move about, you see. So you can't just look at the sun and moon anymore if you understand the Vedic wisdom and say, oh, how pretty, you see. The sun is rising. Let's go and watch the sunset. It's like Surya Narayan is coming up, you see. The God of the sun is upon us, and he's lighting up our whole life. And you're not going to forget that for a second. You're not going to slip into some sort of complacency or superficial preoccupation with mundane human convention. Quoting our own founder, like Sixon. Mundane human convention. Well, this is the effect of Maya, mundane human convention, superficial preoccupation, complacency, you see. Tamas, laziness. You can't move yourself. See? Or if you do, you only move yourself in a circle of restlessness. You see? Restless wombs. And if you're with restless people, you get born with restless people, and you die and move back to restless ancestors, and you come forth again. So these cycles you want off of. Well, Vasishtha is in full awareness of all of this, and he got it from the authority, Lord Brahma. See? Now he's trying to impress upon Shri Raama that suffering is unreal. This is going to be a difficult task, see, especially for those who are in it. See, Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa again, cancer of his throat. Someone brushes against him and feels a thrill of joy just by contacting the master's emaciated body. And the master looks up and says, "Oh, you rascal, you've discovered my secret." Someone else comes in, talks to him, hole in his throat, right, cancer. "Doesn't that hurt, master?" "Only when I talk to you," he says. "As soon as you go away, my mind will go back up to the feet of Kali, and I won't feel this." You see. Why won't he feel it? Because it's not ultimately real. And he's not dwelling on it, you see. He's transcending it all the time. He's a past master at this. Christ knew he was going to be crucified, and when he felt that on the cross, he said, "O Lord, why have you forsaken me?" But he wasn't giving up his faith in God. He knew that since before he was born. He was God in human form. Why would he give up his faith on the cross? See. Come to find that there's a song in the hymnal of the Jewish citadels of the time that's named, "O Lord, why have you forsaken me?" He was singing it on the cross. See. To show them that he transcends death, you see. That death is a mere nothing. Now, if you go back, if you go forward 140 years to the father of yoga's time, 140 AD, at least in that incarnation of the father of yoga, you'll find him giving the teaching of the 5 hells, deeper, darker hells, Mishra, Tam Mishra, and so forth. The 5th and lowest hell is fear of death. If you have come to such a state that you fear death, then they describe you like a snake living in fear of a frog, when you should be having it for dinner. So fear of death is as low as you can fall. You, the noble, eternal, birthless, deathless soul, fearing death, does that make sense, you see? You should be walking around as if you were eternal life in a human body. You see. There should be nothing that could make you despondent. Our founder here, SRV Associations, Lex Hixon, also known as Jikai in the Zen community, also known as Sheikh Nur al-Jarahi amongst the Sufis, and Purushottam among the Hindus, and other great names that he was given, was never despondent one moment of his entire life. Not when I was there. In fact, he was maddeningly positive. You were just waiting for him to show some sort of fall from that ever equanimous state he was in all the time, you see. And I saw him when he had cancer of the intestine, speaking of cancer. He was always positive. He talked to me, laughed with me in those final days, and when I saw him near the end, and told me about the work SRV would be doing. So that kind of ultra-positivity isn't based on just, let's keep a good attitude, folks. You see, that's the practice phase. It's based upon you knowing the birthless, deathless nature of your soul, without a shred of a doubt. And there's nobody or nothing in the 3 worlds that can convince you otherwise. Talk about how they say the courage of your convictions. See? Because the father of yoga also said one of the 9 great obstacles to that is called indeterminacy. See? You're uncertain about things. You hold uncertainty in you. And that shouldn't be there. See? Well, Maya has a tendency to cause this uncertainty, and in this great avatar, although he's only 14 or so years old, he has this uncertainty about the world now because he's seen people suffering. And up to his 14th year, just like Lord Buddha, he, in his father's palace, he never felt suffering. He was the son of a king, and it's samipya. If you're samipya, you're like the son of a king. You're very dear to the Lord, right? Samipya means dear to the Lord. If the Lord holds you dear, then you'll never want for anything. So that's what an avatar is, born on the earth. So you never want for a thing. But that's also a supremely sensitive soul you're talking about there. Greater than a past master, greater than a Mahasiddha. This is God incarnate in human flesh as far as Hinduism and Christianity are concerned. The only difference is Christianity believes there's only one that comes once and maybe twice. We're still waiting. But Hinduism believes that there's one that comes many times. And it's not just a prophet we're talking about, or a messenger. This is it. This is the divine descent. And as far as we're concerned, it can happen like every age, maybe every 500 or 600 years. You can trace them. And there's a whole philosophy in India called Avataravada, which is a path that traces the avatar every time it comes into the body. So, with all that as my usual preamble to this class, all sitting around waiting, when is he going to get to that chart there? But I have to set this up, you see, and because the setup is very important. Just like our own version here of the quintessential Yoga Vasistha that we've been using here at SRV. There are other versions of it you can get too, but you can't read the original because it hasn't been put in English. It's too large. See? But one Kashmiri seer got that slimmed down to 32,000 slokas, I think. And that's called the Lagu Yoga Vasistha. And from that I took this quintessential version and told some of the best stories. The setup is really important, not only for the avatar to have this awakening amidst collective humanity, but for us, hundreds, thousands of years later maybe, to see the ingenuity of it, to see the Divine Mother's plan. Divine Mother's workings are extremely obscure, extremely veiled. I mean, you can sing about it. They do. Raja Pata Vritte Nicham Sharada Jnana Daike Vapebhyo Nashana Raksha Kripamayi Namostute. So means, O Mother in modest veil, killer of misery and souls resigned, by saints and sages worshipped, O Mother kind. So these saints and sages know about her and her workings, but it doesn't mean they know everything she's going to do. There's one song I could sing it, the lines of which go, she doesn't even know the extent of her own wisdom. See? She doesn't even know the extent of her own wisdom. So vast it is, you see. And she's lightning, she's lightning-like in her spontaneity. See? That's Kriya Shakti. Basically, if you talk about Kriya Shakti, and you may remember it from one of the charts last week or week before, Jnana Shakti, Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Drovya Shakti. That's the first 4 Shaktis out of Shiva, out of Paramashiva. That's how he gets his work done, you see. Adventitious Shaktis, they're called sometimes. See? So Jnana Shakti, she gets her work done through this amazing wisdom that she holds. Icha Shakti, she gets her work done through indomitable will, Icha. And Kriya Shakti, she gets her work done in such a spontaneous way that nobody sees it happening until it's already there and past, you see. We've got good hindsight with her, but we don't have very good foresight or insight about her. You see. And finally, Drovya Shakti, she actually produces substances, like matter. It all comes from intelligence. And the Indian systems are all very adept at explaining how intelligence turns into an object. It goes through many phases. And some of those phases would be like deep sleep, dreaming, and waking. In dreaming, you've got all these heavenly worlds. That's why you dream about your ancestors, because that's where they are, back inside of you in a dreaming state. So your dreams are definitely not just wisps of your imagination. At least not if you're not taking them on the surface level. There is such a thing as called the 1,000 imbecilities of the mind in dream. So when you come just before waking, you're dreaming about silly things, and you wake up and say, I must be a fool. I don't remember my deeper dreams, you see. I'm just remembering the ones that happened just before I woke up. Well, that's because you're entering into collective consciousness, and they're a bunch of fools. See? And you're taking on that foolishness when you come here. What foolishness? The foolishness that, oh, I'm going to die someday. Didn't I just say? That's the deepest, darkest hell you can come to. If you come to this world, who knows anything here except matter? And you know, they don't know the one most important thing to know about matter is that you can't know it. Vedanta says, and Buddhism concurs, you cannot know matter. You cannot know an object. It's impossible. The only thing you can do is know that it came from your mind. If you know that objects came from your mind, as Holy Mother said, objects are just thought made concretized, she said. And then you've got a hand up on most other people, you see. You've got an advantage. Because you're beginning to fall into the mind-only schools now. Because it isn't going to make any sense that empty matter can fashion itself. It doesn't have any intelligence. It's insentient, you see. And we've worshipped fire and water and everything forever and found out that in the end they're just insentient elements. So there's no profound solution there in physics or in material. In fact, there's danger of getting pulled away from your true nature. Look around. All your vested interests are in material objects, material wealth, vanity, vexation of the spirit, and so forth. Even the Christians are saying so, see, or at least the old Christians did. Ecclesiastes, nothing new under the sun, and all that kind of thing. So, I mean, you're not keeping in step or abreast with these worlds, these inner worlds inside of you. See? So, worlds of solidity, worlds of dream, and then finally worlds of formlessness. See, seeds. If you get back to the worlds of seed and you can open your third eye there, like we're trying to do here with Lord Vasistha's teachings, then you'll know without a doubt that kingdom of heaven is within you. You'll know without a doubt, as Patanjali says in his Yoga Sutras, all knowledge lies within you. Have you found it anywhere else? In books and temples, vain thy search. Swami Vivekananda. See? Where seekest thou? That freedom, friend, neither this nor that can give. In books and temples, vain thy search. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope, that drags thee on. Then cease lament, let go thy hold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. See? Om is the word, is the great word, wisdom. See? So, is there a god or a devil dragging you here and there? No, it's your own hand holding the rope that you can't see, that's dragging you here and there. Let go thy hold. You see? Let go this hold of ignorance on the mind and wake up, you see, to the truth, which is always within you, is waiting to be discovered every breath, you see. Well, it's not that Lord Vasishtha and Shri Ramachandra don't both know this. They're the best knowers of Brahman. And they're acting this beautiful play, and Ramachandra is the young teenage avatar to be still. So Vasishtha has given him this teaching of Sankalpa. See, that's one of the signature teachings of Vasishtha. Sankalpa means mental projection. Everything is a mental projection. Even objects came out of your mind. So let's put that to rest right away, you see. So there's no competing factors like nature or something, you see. Or some creator god, you see. Even Lord Brahma doesn't like the sound of that. What do you mean? I don't create. You can't create something out of nothing. I projected it. It's like pictures on a screen, and you're taking it seriously, you see. You wouldn't want to go up to Lord Brahma and call him a creator. Not in my tradition. Creation's a myth. You can't create something out of nothing. You get it from somewhere, you see. And that somewhere is within, you see. Further within. In stages, in steps, in layers, in worlds, in lokas, in realms, in akashas. And so that's one of the great signature teachings, Sankalpa. And its counterpart, Vikalpa. People themselves are engaging in projection. Let Lord Brahma do the cosmic part of it, then let the gods and goddesses and celestials and ancestors and people do the collective and individual part of it. So again, broken into three types. One for deep sleep, one for dreaming, one for waking. Or if you want to put it, one for intelligence, one for mind, and one for the physical world. See, there's different projections going on. Remember the teaching, right? He said Sankalpa happened at three levels, and his particular way of explaining that was intelligence first. There are some very wise souls projecting, doing the cosmic projection, and it's made out of their intelligence. These are mind-born beings, not body-born or blood-born or ancestor-born, you see. And then mind itself, that's the collective. Everyone has this mind, and they're sharing this collective mind, and that's probably the greatest of all the problems right there. Collective mind with its collective karma. It's going to be a Herculean feat to get beyond that. A Lord Buddha might be able to accomplish it, see, to get beyond the collective karma. Imagine all the acts of all the beings and all the worlds put together, and what that signifies as far as a barrier to your realization. They say, in my tradition, if a person gets illumined, then 12 generations of their family on both sides get the possibility for enlightenment. So if you, right now, decided that you're going to get illumined like Uddalaka did, as we took this chart last week, remember, and he followed this trajectory and was very exacting about every level of it, because he'd tried it twice before and failed. He'd reached very high climbs of his own consciousness, but he'd fallen twice. And this time he was bound and determined to follow through to the end and reach the ultimate goal. Paragatam, Buddha called it. So if that were the case, then you would enlighten 12 generations of your family on both sides, that is, into the past and into the future. Would have the possibility for enlightenment, you see. So that's how serious your life is, you see. What you do with your time, what you do with your mind. And I quote the Paramahamsa here, that being is born to no purpose who, having been given the boon of a human body, fails to realize God in this lifetime. So that, you see. That woke me up when I was 19. You see. I wasn't a young avatar that I know of yet. But it woke me up when I heard that, you see. That being is born to no purpose, who having been given the boon of a precious human birth is unable to realize God in this lifetime. That should be your first and foremost goal, you see. Because it is really the only goal of life according to him. He used to describe it as the one before the zeros. And if you take that away, there's all the experiences of your life, you see. And what do they add up to in the end? We're seeing it all the time. One of the things it might add up to is fear of death, because you think you're dying. And there's no Tibetan Buddhist Rinpoche around there talking to you as you pass from the body to guide you into another realm, because you didn't take the Dharma teachings when you were alive. See, you didn't pound them into your head, at least as much as materialism had been pounded into your head by parents, by society, by politics, by business, by government, and by a pack of fools called collective consciousness. You went with them, you see. You accepted it. You didn't go against the grain. You didn't go against the flow. Oh, go with the flow. See. No, I don't think I will, thank you. Buddha didn't. And he was probably the greatest spiritual soul that ever came to earth. I'm quoting Vivekananda. So if you have a great soul like that come, a great light like that come, then you want to hearken, you see, you want to listen to that and take that as your example, not as your savior. Hindu doesn't believe in saviors, believes in exemplars. There's a big difference there. If you listen in the West, you hear everything about sin and saviors, right? But if you listen in the East, you hear everything about karma and enlightenment. West, sin and saviors. East, karma and enlightenment. See? That's the difference. So turn your ear eastward, and you'll find out you've got this karma to pay, and you're on this wheel, and there's no God or devil that puts you there or is going to get you off there. It's all your own doing. And this puts all the strength in your own hands. See? The church cannot do anything against you then. See? Shame, shame, shame. See? Guilt, guilt, guilt. So, karma and enlightenment, it's all about that. And it's all been your own doing all along. And they're also going to tell you that beyond this karma and its unreal suffering that Vasishtha is trying to lead Ram around in his mind at that particular time in his life, there's this ultimate enlightenment, sarva moksha, or sarva mukti, you see. It's not that I need to get emancipated, it's that I was never bound. See? That's Advaita Vedanta, that's Zen Buddhism right there. That's the crux of non-dual philosophy, no matter what title you might give it. It's I and my Father are one. See? It's, in terms of Moses, it's you are always the same and your years will never change you. That's how Moses put it. See? Looking in the Old Testament for some shred of non-duality, hard to find in all those pages, just look at the Song of Moses. You are the same and your years will not change that. See? He's talking about the Atman, the supreme self of man. See? Your years will not change that. So don't teach your children they're growing and measure them on a wall. Teach them about their Atman that doesn't experience the 6 transformations. Growth is one of those. Birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. And you're going to end up fearing them and giving in to the last one. See? Then what's going to happen but a rebirth? Everything that's born dies, and everything that dies is born again. Sri Krishna in the Gita. See? The birth and death of things is their return to what caused them. Who said that? Shri Raama Chandra Kripalu Bhajamana Harana Bhava Bhayadarunam. Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Vajamana Harana Bhava Bhayadarunam. Shri Ram said it. That little 14-year-old boy that she's counseling, you see, and trying to remove that vestige of Maya that somehow snuck into his head while he was on pilgrimage. When he went out of his father's palace for the first time, just like Lord Buddha was to do hundreds of years later. Ram and Buddha, to me, might as well be just the same being, you see. They both enacted the same thing. All great avatars are not just born in mangers or with poor people, they also take birth with kings, you see, and royalty. They can reach more people that way. So, however you look at it, this great enactment of divine awakening is being evinced, you see, by Lord Vasishtha and Shri Raama. They're the divine couple of that age. See. Rama is still to meet his Sita, you see. And that part of Ram's life is later. And the baby Ram part of with King Dasharatha and his 3 wives, that's earlier, you see. Is the apple of their eye, you see. Beautiful songs about Shri Ram, anklets jingling, running around as a little baby with these 3 wives after him, each wanting to grab him and love him, you see. So, what's not to like about a life like that? See? How's your mother? Which one? See? Do they love you? Yes, all 3 of them. So, this is the part of his life where he's put to the test by suffering. Now, we went through this last week. For the whole entire second half, we followed Uttalaka's trajectory. You see, how to do neti neti. Neti neti is sort of, if there is any practice in Vedanta at all, which one would be hard put to find, neti neti would probably be it. Maybe the 4 jewels and the 6 treasures could also be put in with that. But whatever the case, he's practicing the very strict, non-dual neti neti, and we went through this. If I get into a review, it's going to take the rest of the class, so please, let's not do that. But hold on to your hats, or if you're in India, your dhotis, as we're going to go through it real quick. He fixed the body in an inviolate posture. He reasoned with his mind to practice neti neti. Then he fixed his body in an inviolate posture. Then he focused his mind. Then he controlled the 5 pranas with his breath. See, slowed them down. He separated his senses from their objects. Pratyahar. Then he rendered objects non-existent. Decide right now. See, here I go on one of my commentaries again. I was going to go through the whole thing, but I can't. I have to stop. You have to render the objects non-existent. You can decide that. You, up to now, have been considering them that they exist, and collective consciousness agrees with you. 7 billion other souls, probably, or most of them, are on that page with you. You now have to decide against it, you see. Quantum physics is your friend in that regard, you see. Really is your friend, because it's shown you that they're all changing at a billionth of a second, that there's no such thing as solidity. It's all an appearance. So determine that these objects around you are non-existent. Remember, there's a witness. Then close the 9 gates of the body, fasten the mind in the heart, and simulate death. A quick aside here is that Vivekananda came and he said, all of you are thinking that death is morbid because your parents told you so. He was talking to the Westerners in 1893. But he said, in my country, our parents teach us, if they're dharmic parents, and most of them are, they teach us to face off with death, meditate on death. I am dying now. My body's gone. Oh, there go my senses. I can't see, taste, touch, hear, and smell anymore. See, the objects have just disappeared. Oh, my breath is gone. Oh, I'm still existing. You see, that's neti neti, classic neti neti. So, fasten the mind in the heart and simulate death. Destroy the mind's tendency towards thought forms. They will tend to persist, so destroy them. What's the word? One of Vasishtha's key teachings? Sankalpa. You see, kalpa means imaginings in time. So the mind is engaging in imaginings in time. It imagines the worlds, it imagines other people, it imagines its relatives, it imagines its birth, so on and so forth. It's all just mass collective mental dreaming. Deep sleep puts it to death, at least temporarily. See, it's not there anymore. What happened? No one's there anymore. And your ego's even gone. And you wake up and you remember a little bit of it, and you say, boy, I felt great there. I felt good, you see. 20 minutes of deep sleep made me feel great, but 8 hours of dreaming made me a nervous wreck. See? I ran my wheels. I couldn't get any rest, you see. There's only one bastion of rest in our relative daily life in a 24-hour period, and that's deep sleep. Unless you can meditate. See? Or unless you go into samadhi like the great master did all the time. See? Or unless you die. You see? You can wait for death and you'll probably get a little peace, we hope, about that time. So destroy the mind's tendency towards thought forms. Discriminate away avidya. You know what that is, I think. The first of the 5 kleshas of yoga. It's ignorance. Ignorance of what? Facts and figures? No. Ignorance of your true nature. Discriminate away avidya. Perceive the great light. And when the great light hits you, try and overcome incapacity that comes at the same time. This third eyeful we were just talking about is very disorienting. That's why the teachers tell you not to meditate here. So many people come to me for instructions in meditation. I'm meditating in the third eye. I got a letter the other day from someone in prison. I'm meditating in the third eye. I wrote back, don't do that. You haven't even begun the spiritual path and you're already meditating here. Try here. See? Why? Because fasten the mind in the heart and simulate death. See? You have to open up this chakra first. Kundalini speak, there's the great chakra, and there are 3 below and 3 above. See? So this is the great chakra, the heart. It's even named heart. Sanskrit anahata means heart, and that's the name of this chakra. So 3 below are eating, drinking, and sex life. The 3 above are basically wisdom, vision, and zip the lips, you see. Sahasrara, 1,000-petaled lotus. So when you perceive the great light, and this was what made Ulaka fall before. He perceived the great light and he thought he'd reached the goal, like the Brahman effulgence, you see. But it gave him incapacity, it disoriented him, and he couldn't hold it, so he fell. This time he penetrates through and he masters the curtain of nescience. He pierces through it and he sees the great darkness, the radiant blackness. I would call that Mother Kali, but that's just me. See? Penetrate through the great light and find this radiant blackness. See? And then you're in an ever awake state. You just acquired the insomnia of yoga. See? Our founder coined that nice phrase. I have the insomnia of yoga now. See? Oh, are you going to go to sleep? No, I'm going to go stay awake. There you will uncover the primal moha and disperse its darkness, and finally realize nirvikalpa samadhi, which Ulaka finally did in this story that Vasishtha is telling the young Ram, you see, to destroy the idea that Maya has any reality whatsoever, has any sentiency, has any hold over him. It's all projection. It's all a little bit of weakness on my part. You see, I'm letting this darkness seep into the cracks in my thinking process when I'm sleeping and waking. You see, I'm not keeping up vigil. Right? I have to be on vigil every second of every day, at least in this world. Maybe in other worlds the light is more apparent, but it's not apparent here. People aren't going for it. They're not believing in it. In fact, they don't believe in it. It doesn't exist. It's non-existent. See? That's why you have to render objects non-existent, because they're believing they are existent. What is an object? What can happen with an object? Well, let's see. It can get stolen. It can stop working. It can decay. You can get bored with it. I mean, you can start naming a whole list of things that are wrong with the objects, right? Well, this isn't Ram's problem. He's got an attachment to objects. Never had it. But this pervasive feeling of people suffering gets to him, see, as it would get to any sensitive soul, any compassionate seeker of the Buddhahood, you see, with all its signature compassion in it. So he reaches Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and he can has to refuse these things. Remember, reject personal lordship over all the worlds below him. He doesn't want them anymore. He transcends heavenly existence, and he refuses the occult powers. And this is how he will transcend and become one with his self again. See, return to his original condition. Original mind, OM. See, Om. See. Get yourself back to the real garden. The Guru's garden. Now, here's some descriptions of Satya Samanya by Lord Vasishtha. Freedom from mental thought forms, transcendent of visible things, ability to merge with your Atman at any time. Like Holy Mother said, I can take my Atman out from my wearing cloth anytime I want, look at it, and put it back in and go back to work. You see, can you do that? Because they saw her working, said, do you always think about Brahman when you work? She said, no, how's that possible? There's this work to do. You can't mix Brahman with work. The two are opposite of each other. See, we're naive to think this, you see. We can try and hold two ideals, and it might build a few muscles for us, but the two can't come together. You know the drill, right? Oil and water, do they mix? Oh, yes, they do. Look at that, how pretty. Sit and meditate, my children, for 45 seconds and watch them separate. Well, that's nature and spirit. They don't mix, you see. And we're naive to think so. And our naivety lasts, 45 seconds, 45 lifetimes. Or 45 years until we finally find a teacher and wake up, you see. Then we know without a doubt, we have a courage of our conviction that matter and spirit are two different things. Before that, we had some sort of green coconut oneness going on. See, when a coconut is unripe, it's all one mass. But when it ripens, it turns into 5 layers. 5 layers sounds like body, energy, mind, thought, and ego. To me, doesn't it? The famous 5 sheaths of Vedanta, see, that he has to transcend. See. So no, green coconut oneness is not going to be acceptable to the seeker of ultimate reality. He's got to come to know at least that one salient fact. So that's all about ability to merge with Atman. Holy Mother said, I can withdraw from this work any time I want and see myself. You see. Can we do that? Or are we bound to work? So we can't even rest in our sleep tonight. We're dreaming about our jobs. Or about fear of bosses, lack of money, and that vacation I want to take, whatever it is, you see, it's not rest. It's not peace. What to speak of the peace that passeth all understanding? You see. Transcend Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. Wow. You see, that's a tall order. Videha Mukti is freedom from bodies. That is a soul that has realized his true nature, or her true nature, its true nature, the true nature, so deeply that he'll never come back to a body again. Except by choice. You see. And the Videha Muktis, when they look at the world and the self, there's no contest, you see. Why would I want to depart the peace and bliss and love and life and non-duality of my true nature to go to that place? See. A monk wrote me and sent me this, recently, and wrote me in his message. He said, the world is a big hole in the ground, Babaji, give it up. You've got it right there in my email message. See? The world is a big hole in the world, give it up. See? And I wrote back and said, in good time. I've already given it up, internally. But externally, I still have something to do. And so does he. So, Videha Mukti would be some great penultimate goal. See, get rid of the desire to be born anymore. And it's actually one of Vasishtha's signature teachings. You know, to be reborn again and again is a desire. Father of yoga followed up on that many thousands of years later, Patanjali, and he called it this desire to be born, you see, is a samskara in the mind. There are actually samskaras in the mind, and we'll look at one of them soon, called the desire to be reborn. You see, it's there in the mind, and it just goes on automatic when you die. See? So you're going to pump out bodies, as many as that tree out there is pumping out leaves, and that tree flowers. See? It's all in you. You've got that power. Nobody else has that power. See? It's all in the human soul. All the worlds are in the human soul. So important thing to connect yourself up with the collective mind, then the cosmic mind, and then transcend the whole shooting match like Buddha did. See? You can't transcend it if you don't know what it is. This is one of my sometimes I contest what non-dualists say. See? Oh, just be yourself, be your Atman. See? Ask yourself, who am I? But you have to ask yourself what I'm not first. See? You can't just jump to who am I. That would be like going from here to here, see, without any of this. You have to know that you're not the 5 elements, you're not the 5 senses, and you're not the 5 subtle senses in dream, and the 5 elements in dream, and you're the mind and the intellect and the ego. All of this is what he had to go through to absolutely put a stake in the heart of rebirth, ever again, see, in ignorance. Rebirth in wisdom is not birth. We have to say that. It's not being born again. It's like an octopus sticks out its arms on the ocean bottom to feel something. See? That's like a Buddha, right? Buddha is here and in one of his emanations, right? There's a beautiful song in India that says that. No more birth in the womb of matter for me, only emanation from my Divine Mother. No more birth in the womb of matter for me. See? Only emanation from my Divine Mother. So when we speak this way in Vedanta or in Buddhism, in any of the mind-only schools, we're not saying give up all bodies and never come back again. We're saying get wisdom and come back, you see. But that is Jivan Mukta and Videha Mukta, you see. And there's a state beyond it called Turiya, or sometimes they call it Turiyatita, beyond the beyond. Buddha mentioned it. Have no hope for me, forevermore for the worlds. I'm gone and gone forever. See, I've gone beyond the goals, got them. I've gone to the Paragatam, the supreme goal. So it's beyond the beyond, Turiyatita. So this dissolves even ideas of individual liberation, Jivan Mukta, or Videha Mukti, you see, freedom from bodies. It even goes beyond those kinds of high ideas. I'm not saying don't reach for those. See, step by avastas, you pull yourself towards the ultimate goal. Don't jump steps, though. So quickly through that, so that we could get to this before the break, because this is what I had as a companion piece for this chart, and we didn't get to it last week. Though it's iti and neti in a glance, if you will. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you see that this double helix here of Maya is always turning and throwing off, as she does, all of these cosmic principles. 5 elements. Lo and behold, 5 elements don't only happen here, they happen in your dream too. You have earth, air, fire, water, and ether in a dream tonight. See? That should be the first clue to you that, oh, maybe these came from those. See? We're thinking that those came from these. That is, I'm dreaming about earth, air, fire, water, and earth because the reality is I'm a physical body here on earth. So naturally, I just dream about them. You see how ass backwards this is? The way we think about things? We don't even entertain the possibility that maybe everything came from inside out. So if we do, and we take a teacher like Vasishtha, then he began to teach us that that these inner senses and these inner elements, 5 of each, inside and 5 are outside, are connected, and these came first. Anterior to life and mind is is the Atman, and anterior to the waking state is the dreaming state, and anterior to both waking and dreaming is deep sleep state. That's how consciousness moves. You know, they call that in Gaudapada's philosophy, he's the great non-dualist of India, the 4 feet of Brahman, Brahmapada. I could sing about it, you see. The 4 feet of Brahman. How does Brahman get around? From Turiya down to deep sleep, down to dreaming, down to waking, and back again, moves. See, that's how Brahman gets around, how consciousness moves, without ever going anywhere. If you believe that this world is real, then you feel like you're journeying. Christ said that. Kings of heaven are within you, but he also followed that up by saying, these heavens within you are realms of sojourn, realms of rest, realms of pleasure, realms of peace. So basically, he's not just some enigmatic statement to John in the Garden of Gethsemane saying, oh, the kingdoms of heaven are within you, and John goes, what do you mean? I've never seen them. But then he says, but these are places of rest, and they're places of action, and they're places of sojourn. So that's important. Souls actually move in lifetimes through these different realms. Why don't they remember that? I suppose it's because maybe you took a vacation to Spain recently and you can't remember much of what you did there, see. You only come back with a few things. Well, if those few things you came back with were essential, then that would be a great benefit, see. Like if you went into deep sleep tonight and you opened your third eye there and you saw the seeds for all of this and you brought some of that back with you, you'd be a seer. My teacher used to say that. Swami Asheshanandaji Maharaj, Sri Sharda Devi's last living monastic disciple till he passed away in the 90s, used to tell us that. He said, a man goes into deep sleep, comes back a fool. Goes in a fool, comes back a fool. But a seer, potential seer, goes into deep sleep, sees what's there and comes back a seer, full-fledged seer. See? He knows the kingdoms of heaven are within him. And now the next level of realization he must make is that all these kingdoms of heaven within him are not essentially real. See? It's not just that this world is unreal. Dreaming is also unreal. Deep sleep is also unreal. See? Because why? Because there is only one reality, and that's what the seers have been telling us from time out of mind. One reality. And it's not a numerical oneness you're talking about. See? Eka in Sanskrit. It's an all-pervasive oneness. See? Not numerical, but all-pervasive. It's there everywhere and in everything at all times. And since it's there in everything and everywhere at all times, it doesn't have to move. Isn't that what you're doing when you're meditating? You're trying not to move. First, body must not move, right? Then breath must not move. Then mind must not move. You're simulating death is the simulation of Brahman. Because Brahman does not move. It doesn't have to. So these powerful non-dual axioms of Vedanta are at the foundation of all this apparent movement. That's why Vivekananda said, coming and going is all mere nonsense. Where's the place when the soul will move, when all the space is inside the soul? Where's the time for which it will come and go when all of time is in the soul? See how brilliantly that great soul put it? He said Buddha was the greatest soul that ever came to earth because he was the Buddha. See? Come again. This is Vivekananda on the scene here in America in 1893 and 1901. See? Twice he visited us and gave us a couple years of his time. Where is time and where is space that all of this is going on? It's within you see. So he's taking all of these idiomatic axioms that are part of the Mayic sleight of hand, you see. And he's reducing them all down to a few beautiful sayings like that, you see. It's good to be born in the church, don't die in one. See? It's better to wear out than to rust out. Work as worship, labor as love. You see, I mean, I can start thinking and coming up with all these beautiful little tiny one-liners, you see, that Vivekananda came to tell us, just to cut to the chase. Right? Cut away the superstitions of religion, is what he called it. And he should know because India had plenty of them, you see. I mean, India is where this is all coming from. You imagine getting something this powerful in your very genes, in your heredity, in your births, the Dharma, and forgetting it, see? And then you're going to tell me that Maya is weak or something, you see? Well, I don't have to worry about Maya. The very authors of this great eternal Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, fell victim to Maya in the current age. That's how careful we have to be. Do you want to fall back into the ocean of samsara again? The wheel of birth and death? Do you really want that? I mean, if I actually approach people and ask them that, some of my students, I always get the same answer. Do you want to come back with your ancestors again? No. I don't want to do that again. And these are people that had good families. Plenty of them didn't, you see. Some people say, oh no, I don't want to live with those pack of fools again. See. But even people with good parents say, I don't think I really want to repeat that again, you see. Been there, done that. See. Spirit is always fresh, ever new, you see. It always wants to experience newness and freshness. So as long as it's in the worlds of name and form and time and space, there are higher times and climbs to experience. These low ones, you know, are to be renounced. See? Nivritti, they call them. The realms to be renounced. If you look at lists in India of 24 cosmic principles and so forth, and you look at these realms of waking, and sometimes even waking and dreaming, they label them Nivritti. It's like a long time ago they came to the conclusion, oh, those are to be renounced. As soon as I see them, see, I renounce them. Like Christ when he was young, and like Ram when he was young. The minute you see them, you become wary. See. That is, the minute you see name, nama, rupa, form, name, nama, form, rupa, space, desha, time, kala, and nimitta, cause and effect, you draw back, you see. I renounce the worlds of name and form and time and space based in karma, and I accept my true self, see. Because the two do not mix, see. They do not mix, and they never will. They're of two different natures. One's sentient, one's insentient. And the insentient one came out of the sentient. And it serves the sentient, not the other way around. We have become slaves to matter, right? So now we're serving matter. See? That's cart before the horse. Or if you're a French philosopher, Descartes before the horse. You want to put it back in order, right? That is, the right order of things is from dreaming, from turiya to deep sleep, to dreaming, to waking. Turn around and go back. If you're following the 4,320,000,000-year-old evolutionary theory of science, then you go out and you never come back. And you don't know where it came from either. So you might as well not believe in an inside, like Jesus and Buddha and Vasishtha and Lord Brahma and everyone else does, you see. Not only just believe in it, they're actually witnesses of it. It's their own projection. It's like the two never got sundered in the first place, right? They were always one reality. They just had to make the distinction that one was insentient and one was sentient. Difference between myself and matter, or nature and spirit, or God and nature, or creature and creator, however you want to put it, you see. Make the distinction. That's neti neti. So we didn't really get very far with this chart, but after the break we will. We'll take it up. Let's take our break right here. Thank you for listening. I'm ready. Svagatam, you have all returned. I know all of us 14 here have returned. We hope all of you on the live streaming have also returned. Although the first hour and a half was a full meal of Lord Vasishtha's nourishment, no doubt. But we continue to take up this path of Neti Neti. It's very well known, as we were saying at the break amongst some of us, that it's quite often for the monks, but there are of course many intellectual householders and people who feel like singing and dancing and pujas and bhakti yoga and karma yoga done well and everything provides a lot of nourishment and a lot of substance in spiritual life and helps fulfill desires and probably leads to a nice state of salvation. But quite often they feel that, and Uddalaka is a good case of that, that if he can penetrate through to these higher states and actually have the nirvikalpa experience, that's going to take something like Atmagyan. It's going to take something very, very sharp and pointed. Like they say, sharpen the arrow of mind and then aim it at the target of Brahman and release and penetrate the mark. So a dull arrow is going to just fall off and even question whether your aim is very good if you can even see the target of Brahman. But this kind of neti neti process is very exacting. Let's make no doubt about it and make no bones about it. But it's possible for us in the West, and I think Vivekananda meant for it to come to us, because when he got here and he saw the intellectual nature of the Westerners, the Americans, he was very impressed by a lot of it. And he often would say, send over the Gita in English, send over the Upanishads in English, send over the Code of Manu in English, send over the non-dual scriptures in English, put them into English and send them to these people. He knew that the path of Jnana Yoga that we are looking at in terms of the ancient rendering of it with Lord Vasishtha was able to bring person to enlightenment in one lifetime. In fact, Vivekananda even says at the beginning of the Raja Yoga book, if you've read, you should be able to become a enlightened yogi in 6 months. So he wasn't one to prescribe a fast path either. He said, Jnana Yoga, maybe a lifetime or two, but Bhakti Yoga is the long, slow boat to India. It was the long, slow boat to China and Japan too, but basically this Jnana Yoga path is, especially in terms of a teaching like Neti Neti, is very effective in destroying ignorance. And even the God of love, Krishna in the Gita, says, Nahi gyanena sadrishyam pavitram iha vidyate. That is, there is no purifier in the three worlds like wisdom. It's the only thing that will destroy your ignorance. Now, bhakti can destroy your ignorance, but it has to be extremely intense. It has to be the real thing. It can't just be an off again, on again thing, or a few pujas, or putting on some nice clothes and going to kirtan somewhere and dancing. It's got to be very intensified, and there's specific practices to bhakti yoga that you do that will intensify it, and it has to be kept up all the time. So all four of these yogas, devotion, wisdom, action, and meditation, Raja Yoga, are to be put together in a kind of synthesis. But you might say that the classic way of thinking about it is either bhakti first and then jnanam, or jnanam first and that gives you bhakti. These are the two wings of the bird. Meditation is very late coming to most people, especially in the authentic meditation. Sometimes I've had that experience with many of my students where they have very powerful meditations as soon as you sit them down. Children are that way even. You set them down in meditation and their mothers are saying, "What have you done to my child? He's not coming out of meditation." You just have to shake them, So they've just come, they're so recent from this light of Brahman, coming out of this light of Brahman, that they remember it quicker than we do. All this conditioning, as the Buddhist says, piled on top of our thinking process as we become adults. And karma yoga, we know the downside of that. How dangerous a path it can be if not done with all the karma yogic laws. There's some good 10 or 12 of them listed in the Gita. The very first being, to the work you have the right, but not to the fruits. Well, it lets most people out of the karma yoga path right there, you see. What? No fruits? You see? I just have to work and I don't get anything? So it's an odd concept for Westerners particularly. So this is just a minor preamble back into the Neti Neti teaching. When you're getting this teaching, you're getting a very, call it monastic teaching. And although householders and Vanaprasthans and other beings have taken the path, and in fact, the fact that they have and have made great headway recommends it to all of us as intellectual Westerners, people who want to get rid of these superstitions of religion and also want to rise above superficial devotional practices like once a week going to church and things like that, you see, that aren't doing it, that aren't cutting it. Or just morality and ethics alone take us to heaven with our ancestors and we're going to be happy with that? I don't think so. Not if you're into Vedanta or Buddhism. So back to this double helix she's spinning, you see all the time, Maya makes the good look bad and the bad look good, is what they say in Tantra. So they take what is positive and make it look negative, and she takes what's negative and makes it look positive. So material wealth looks good, so she makes it look positive, but it's really very negative if you get attached to it. Spiritual practice looks bad to most people, even those who want to do it. I'm not talking about just the people who don't believe that it will do them any good. There are people who believe that spiritual path is good, but they can't get themselves to get on a regimen. You see, it's very difficult to be faithful to a regimen like that. So anyway, that looks bad then, but it turns good later. What is sweet in the beginning and turns sour later, Krishna says in the Gita, avoid that, Arjuna. But what is sour in the beginning turns sweet later, that's what you want, you see. So you measure yourself up against those apparently negative things and turn this helix of Maya, make it spin in your favor. No easy trick, but it has been done by great seers and sages and saints of all religious traditions. India just happens to have a plethora of them, see. And many, many different kinds of scriptures, not just one scripture, and many, many facets to their religion, if you want to call it a religion. And in India, religion and philosophy have always been like this. They've never been sundered. They've always been together. Religion has checked philosophy for callousness, and philosophy has checked religion for sentimentality, and therefore it's been kept a beautiful two wings of the bird. See, you can get off the ground with it. I would suffice to say that wisdom alone could get you off the ground if you studied it with a teacher and remained faithful to it as your path. Jnana Yoga. And this is what Vasishtha is recommending to us. Atma Gyan. He loves Atma Gyan, and he's infusing that into Shri Raama, and Shri Raama already has it, so it's an easy thing to bring this out of this young teenager. I've actually seen that happen with young people here in the West. There are some that are not receptive to these teachings whatsoever. Too many Western lifetimes. But I've seen some that have heard this truth and have immediately wakened up. He initiated our youngest member, my last visit to the mainland. That's the West Coast for you who aren't akamai to our terminology over here. But she's just started out with us when she was like 9 or 10 years old, and now she took initiation at 19, you see. And there's a couple other young men who've come along in their late teens and 20s and have joined SRV associations and taken mantra diksha, that's our commitment here, into the path of Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Sharda Devi, and Swami Vivekananda. And the direct disciples and the 7 billion people, the 5 million people out of some 7 or 8 billion people that exist. I forget the number nowadays. Is there 11 billion on Earth or something like that? We'll have to look it up or Google it. But that 5 million of them now are following this beautiful path of this Kali avatar we call Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and Sri Sharda Devi who came with him. And what to speak of Swamis Vivekananda, Brahmananda, and others that have come to earth, and many of them on the auspice of this combination of Bhakti and Jnana Yoga. So when you look at it in terms of Neti Neti specifically, and you turn this double helix, you look at both sides of Neti Neti, but we mustn't leave out what's called Iti Iti. And usually in the Vedanta teachings of today, we're not hearing this term Iti Iti. Neti Neti really in Sanskrit is na eti, not this, not that. And you just put it together and say Neti Neti. But iti iti means all this, all this. So the implication is that when you do this process correctly, everything that you renounced later shows itself up as being a manifestation of Brahman. Iti iti. It was really all this, all the time. Now, I'm jumping to the chase here, but I'm also doing it with the understanding that most people won't understand this when it's being said to them. They can't imagine everything actually being Brahman all the time. Not when there's birth and decay and death and disease and suffering and horrible acts going on all the time. So you can say naively, "Oh, all this is Brahman. How nice, how nice." Roses and flowers, and sweep the rest under the carpet. But when you actually look at it, or even get a glimpse of the pervasive ocean of human suffering, it's not going to make sense to you anymore immediately, especially if you're partaking in any of that suffering yourself. It's a slap in the face. It's very sobering to catch a glimpse of that. Well, Ram has caught a glimpse of that. He's a very high-minded soul, son of a king, the perfect man, he was called later. Ramayana, the scripture about Ram calls him the perfect man, but the Adhyatma Ramayana, which is a non-dual version of the Ramayana, calls him incarnation of God. And Sita and Hanuman, other great souls around him, are speaking to him as if he were, about him to others as if he were Avatar. You see, Ramayana just proposes him as the perfect son of King Dasaratha. So you've got kind of dual version, and I've got the non-dual version of these stories. The non-dual version, for those of us who believe I and my Father are one, or be thee perfect as thy Father in heaven is perfect, or any of the other beautiful non-dual statements like Tattvamasi, or Pragyanam Brahman, or Ayamatma Brahma, or any of the Mahavakyas of India, we take those seriously, and to be the ultimate truth, even if we haven't quite realized that ultimate truth yet, then for us, there's no problem, you see, in perceiving the ultimate identity of the Supreme Soul with the apparently individualized soul. It's a careful way of speaking. See, apparently individualized soul is the Jivatman. It's individualized, broken itself into many parts, but that's all because of Mahamaya, of Maya, you see, has made that look that way. When we're all of one blood, we're all of one flesh, we're all of one thought, basically. Thought is where things begin to refine themselves, see. Higher thought, the ability of the mind to lift itself like a hot air balloon, rather than flow like rainwater into the lowest possible place. There's the difference between a worldly person and a person who is seeking non-dual reality, or even just to get rid of suffering, to get wealth for good dharmic purposes, to gain knowledge of higher things, or to become a lover of divine reality. Those are the 4 kinds of people Krishna points out in the Gita. 4 kinds of people seek me, Arjuna, he says. The one who is suffering, the one who wants riches for dharmic purposes. So there's another distinction we have to make. People who want riches for pleasure and those who want riches for dharmic reasons. Our founder was one of those, had plenty of riches, you see, but ran around in a t-shirt and dungarees all the time, and was visiting every holy person that came from any country. Spend his money on an airline ticket to get there, you see, so he could have darshan with this person. That's what Lex Hickson's life was like, and I was with him for part of it, so on occasions. Do I have to pay to get in? No, it's free, sir. Come on in. Well, I'll write you a check for $108 anyway. See, I saw him do that all the time. $108 checks were flowing everywhere. And that was a auspicious number because there were 108 beads on the mala, and he was turning them all the time on the flight. When he got there, after he left, he was always doing the mantra. So, purification methods, and Neti Neti is going to be one that gets to the deepest recesses of the mind. Mantra will also do that. Devotion, if it's intense enough. See, so the difference between Neti Neti and Iti Iti is shown on this chart. Let's go through it quickly. If you're practicing Neti Neti, you say, "I'm not the five elements." But if you take that to the Iti Iti side, it's the five elements exist in me. See? In other words, you're going to have to know your Samkhya philosophy, that out of deep sleep, in deep sleep there were the seeds for the five elements. They were the thought, air, earth, fire, water, and ether. The thought, intelligent thought of God, mind of God, see. And how that came out was then into the dreaming state, then it became the subtle elements that you experience tonight when you fly in air, or when you cook your food over fire, or when you swim in a dream river. You see. And then it came out further and solidified itself to the waking state. And so, gee, these must all be in me, right? So here's Neti Neti in action. The immature renunciate would stay here. And necessarily so. And he would go on to this: I'm not the senses of cognition, nor of action. Action are procreation and locomotion and so forth, and those are your five active senses, and your five cognitive senses are tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, and smelling. So you've heard me say over and over again that you should connect earth to smell, and water to taste, and fire to sight, and air to touch, and ether to hearing. Those are the early yogic connections that the Father of Yoga wants you to make if you've forgotten them. You should have never forgotten them, because if you came out from the realm of dreaming into the realm of waking and you forgot those, then that's why you can't get back, or you can't make the connection back into your dream state with any clarity of mind. And then your dreams just become sort of foggy notions that are wisps, you see. But no, you brought the five elements and the five senses out of dream state into the waking state, and you should maintain them there and maintain the connection to them back into dreaming, so that you go consciously back into dreaming tonight and tomorrow night and every night of your life. If you base your thinking process on that premise, you establish, or let's call it reestablish, a bridge that was torn down by avidya, right? At one point, avidya, you see. And now you're going to have to go back and tear down avidya and resurrect that bridge. See? Like the bridge from Sri Lanka to India, right? that Ram built to save Sita, right? Hanuman had to jump first, you see, to get Sita, but later on a bridge was built. Well, from satellite now you can see the pylons, the old places where those were once existed. Sort of, they're saying this proves that Shri Ramchandra, as ancient as he was a real being, you see. Look it up on Google again, you know, on the web. A beautiful picture of these places that a bridge might have sat upon, these huge pylons, you see. Reminds me of the Bay Bridge that came crumbling down. They had to shook and had to build a new one recently. But So this connection then is very important to make from the gross to the subtle, and from the subtle to the causal. It's pretty much absent. Yet there's your deep dreaming, your deep sleep, your dreaming, and your waking states. And what does Gaudapada say about those? That the deep sleep is A, and the dream is U, and the waking state is M. What's that spell? Hurrah! You see, Om. You see? So waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, from outside in, is the word. It's all the word Om. And the Mandukya Upanishad says that in 12 slokas. You can read it in 12 minutes. It's all about your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep pretty much being Om, and that everything that you see is Om. It's all the word. See, you're just seeing the outer part of it here vibrating grossly, the grossest vibration. But that comes from a subtler vibration, and that comes from a causal vibration. I mean, take the bell. See, I think we did that a couple series ago. Just the bell, in its latent state is the causal state. All the vibration is present in it, right? Now strike it, you see, and it comes out and then returns, so it disappears. So the sound of the bell, Shri Ramakrishna said, Tum, is all about explaining symbolically, metaphorically, the sound of Om. It's all manifested from an unmanifested state, and it goes through these 3 states, you see, and still remains itself, and capable of producing more and more vibrations all the time. Well, this great Mahamaya, you might say, is holding that bell. That Shakti of Lord Brahma, Saraswati, is the goddess of the word. She's called Vak Devi. So she holds the word. She is the word. She is intelligence. And if you start thinking of the Divine Mother of the Universe that you've heard about as intelligence itself, then you might give up looking for her as a form, you see. And you might start thinking of her as the very stuff of your dreams, and the very essence of the seeds in your deep sleep. And then you might start to, become akamai to her workings, you see. And you can stand back later. We just, some weeks ago in Seattle, had one of our most marvelous retreats ever. And it was all on the Devi Upanishad. I found out that of the 108 Upanishads, there's at least 7 to the goddess. So that's where Tantra and Vedanta intersect, as far as I'm concerned. Because Tantra is mostly about form, and Vedanta is mostly about formlessness. Anyway, I'm already far off track, so I won't want to get further off track. But basically, that Divine Mother retreat we did made us aware of the workings of Mother. It was like when you concentrate on her Upanishad on a retreat like that with a dozen or so other people, you realize that her working brought you there to study that Upanishad at that time. And she starts revealing from inside of her own scripture, her own nature, to you, and all the workings that brought you there become lit up. See, these are the connections that are so important for spiritual life, and that are have become so overgrown, like old trails in a forest that got overgrown with brush and trees and so forth. You can still maybe just barely see where there was once a trail, you see. And you have to get in there with that machete and carve it out for yourself again. So I am not the senses of cognition or action. There's 10 then, right? So I'm not those 10, but Iti would say these senses are nothing but Brahman at all times. See nothing but Brahman all the time. So the implication is they hear nothing but Brahman, they taste nothing but Brahman, they feel nothing but Brahman all the time, see, and hear nothing but Brahman. So that's how to live the non-dual life in the moment. Past, present, and future they're not real. It's called the 3 phases of time. But behind the past, present, and future is the eternal moment. So if you say, I'm living in the present moment, I would say to you, I'm sorry about that. See? Because I'm living in the eternal moment. See? That's different than the present. Present just means I'm enjoying a little bit here today, and tomorrow I'll enjoy here today, tomorrow. again, you see. But if I'm living in the eternal moment, I am the enjoyer, you see. I'm not the enjoyment. And everything comes to me. Vivekananda had a beautiful saying where he said, people don't experience intense pleasure anymore. Now, he's a monk, he's given up pleasure. But he would rather see people get back to this level where they're experiencing the most intense pleasure, you see. And so that they're really living again. They're really vibrating. You see, they can call themselves real people. They're not dull, and the senses aren't dulled down, and the objects aren't boring anymore. And so it's just like, it's like looking at a puppy in India, you know, some of the most unfortunate creatures on earth. I met a puppy in India once that didn't wag its tail. You see, I thought, oh God, don't be born as a puppy in India. You see. Puppy that can't wag its tail, that's pretty bad. You see, that's low. That's dense Maya. You see. So, again, these senses see nothing but Brahman at all times. The same here is true with the mind, but we're getting to that. Neti neti at the level of prana, I'm not the ever-changing vital forces of nature. So, I'm not the prana. You see. Nacha prana sango is how Shankar put it in his Nirvana Shatkam. I sang it last week. I'm not the 5 pranas, but the insentient life force exists for a sentient self. And that's how the practitioner of iti iti, practitioner or the adept of iti iti would look at it. I'm not the 5 pranas, but I know they exist for a sentient self, you see. Prakriti exists for Purusha. So there's your intense pleasure, you see. All of this has come out of me, and it's there to serve me as long as I'm in the body, and then I can give it all up, and it'll just go back into me. See, people think if I give things up, it's gone forever. It's not only objects that aren't gone forever, it's lust, anger, greed, envy, and jealousy, and pride that are not gone forever. You can give those up, but you'll never get rid of them. They'll go back to their seed form. So, Shri Ramakrishna said, then lust after God. Be angry you haven't realized God. Be jealous of others who have realized God when you haven't. See, transform them. You can't get rid of them, transform them. This is the tantric sublimation way, right? It's a way of sublimation. People like to hear that. You see, oh, I don't have to give up lust? See, but of course there's a sublimation process that has to be undergone. At the next level here, and on the way we could mention, here's one of the helix pointing to the changing Brahman, Saguna Brahman, and her other hand pointing to the Nirguna Brahman, the unchanging Brahman. So back and forth this is going, Nirguna to Saguna, Saguna back to Nirguna, that is with attributes back to no attributes, and from no attributes back to attributes. And this is also Maya at a very high level, that you can go to sleep tonight and everything will disappear, and you can wake up and there it is again. See? You can go to death and everything will disappear, but you can be born again and everything will appear again. You can go into meditation and go into samadhi and everything will disappear in nirvikalpa. But if you come back out, it's going to be there in savikalpa, right? So you're trying to get rid of everything, neti-neti style. Good luck with that, you see. Everything exists at all times, and this is the iti-iti realization. So you probably better be saying, instead of I'm not the ego, the mind, its thoughts, or the intellect, you might want to be saying, Brahman is perceived via every modification of the mind. So everything I'm seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, and smelling, as far as the 5 elements go, is nothing but Brahman. Everything I'm thinking, everything, my thoughts themselves, the energy of my thinking, mind as a tool, and so forth, this is all modification, you see, of my mind. I'm seeing nothing but Brahman at all times. And they asked Vivekananda, like somebody asked Vivekananda that once he first came in 1893 and asked him, have you seen God? And Swamiji, without even blinking an eye, said, I've seen nothing but God ever since I was born. And so have you. So here's speak about courage of your convictions. I mean, it's beyond that. He's just God walking around on two legs, and that's actually what he told us. Oh, I see, in India, we realized a long time ago that man was just God walking around on two legs. You haven't seen that yet. You're still calling each other sinners. But liable of liable, it's the worst sin to call another man a sinner. Why would you want to start out on that premise? You see, at least give them the benefit of the doubt. Gee, maybe you're the Atman. So if you call people the Atman, maybe they'll become the Atman. You see, if you call them sinners, maybe they'll become sinners, if they're not already. But your own Christ told you, go and sin no more. It's just a mistake you made. A veil fell over the soul, just remove it. You see, the soul can't be made impure. It's eternally pure, I hope you know that. So he was giving out that kind of teachings. I mean, you can sing about it too, again, as far as down here. I'm not the five senses and the five elements. We were looking today at the 150th birth anniversary celebration of Vivekananda that happened last year. And we saw some of the musicians who were playing there. And this song came up. One of them was singing this. Mono chalo nija liketane. Mono chalo nija liketane. Shamshara videshe videshirveshe brahmo kino karane. Mono chalo nija liketane. O mind, return to your own abode, your own home. You are a foreigner here, in this foreign land of five senses and five elements. Why do you roam about aimlessly with no real purpose? The five senses and the five elements, all these are different from you. You are none of them. Why have you become senseless in your attachment to others and forgotten your own true essence? O mind, return to your own abode, your eternal home. So always wanting you to do the neti-neti and iti-iti process. If you can do them in conjunction with each other, all the better. Now I must say about it that if sometimes it's not good to mix paths, so a lot of the very radical, non-dual practitioners of neti-neti will just do this side. But what they get to is called abhava. And those who practice the iti-iti side, either then or eventually, they get to Mahayoga. So there's these two great ideals in this way of thinking in Vedanta. Abhava is really, if in Sanskrit, it just means no moods, no forms, no feelings, nothing anymore, you see. So it's this great nothingness that became the ultimate goal of Buddhism, really. And but you ask, say, Dalai Lama nowadays, I heard him field a question like that, is about emptiness, and Dalai Lama says, well, emptiness is a stage. So the Buddhists too, thinking in terms of course Tibetan Buddhists would, because they have a relationship with forms. Hundreds and thousands of Buddhas are fine with them. It's not like if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him, like the non-dual Buddhists, but, because that's a form and get thee behind me, right? But if you have Tibetan Buddhism, you have all these Buddha fields and so forth. So they would look at emptiness as a station, you see. But the highest emptiness like that, abhava, is going to be filled with bliss, you see. We say we strip away everything, elements, senses, mind, intellect, ego. We strip it all away, and this is described in the Vivekachudamani of Shankara in 700 AD. When the disciple does this according to his instructions, then the student says, well, I did all that in my practice and I found that nothing was left. And Shankara said, right on, great. Now meditate on that nothingness. So in ancient times, and I'm talking about thousands and thousands of years before Shankara said that in the Vivekachudamani, one of the rishis in India said, Om Drishyam Pratitam Pravilapayan San Tan Matram Anandaganam Vibhavayam Samahita Sam Bahir Antaram Va. Bahir is the outer, Antaram's the inner. So what he's saying there is take the outer and take the inner, put them into one indivisible reality, then meditate on that reality, pass your time contentedly, and be free. So getting rid of the idea that there's two-ness, right? Outer and inner. At first you start off with it, you see. And maybe only the outer is real to you. I mean, they're giving these teachings to a pack of fools, right? We're all fools, and we're born into this world thinking it to be real, our parents are real, our experiences are real, our objects are real, our wealth is real, death is real, suffering real, like in the case of Shri Raama in his teenage years, when none is the case, you see. So they give us a niti-neti teaching. You know, here's something stiff, here's a bracer for you, see. Quaff this nectar, you see, and transform yourself, see. Sober yourself up. Because it's going to be to your best advantage to know that all these things are unreal. Because at the foundation of it all, you're the reality. It only is there because you're there. So this eternal witness comes forth. Sakshi Buddham, it's called in ancient times. Brahmanandam, Paramasukadam, Kevalam, Gyanamurtim, Dandvaititam, Gaganasadriyasham, Tatvama, Shadi, Laksham, Ekam, one, Nityam, eternal. Vimalamatchalam, Sarvadi, Sakshi Bhutam. You are the one eternal witness of all phenomena. See? You. Who, me? What are you pointing at? You see? You can't do that in Vedanta. See? Right there, hit you right in the heart. You see? You say when you're doing japa, you see on your hand, right? You've got the japa beads here. Your fingers are pointing at your heart. See? So you're saying the mantra and you're thinking it's outside and has to be uttered out in the physical air, but it's coming, bubbling up from the very essence of your being. See? And it's only out here so that you can turn it to go in. If you go to the altar there and you do this, what is there is also here. That's the first mudra you do. See, it's called the Mriga mudra. So you point at the altar and you point here. See, what's there is here. So the altar has actually come out of me. Since I'm having a problem with me right now, can't see myself, right? Then I've got to create something like that's a facsimile, right? And this is the purpose for worship and puja and ritual. Ritual, you know, India has a long relationship with that, and they're not going to get rid of it ever. There have been facets of India, like Buddhism, that have gotten rid of ritual. And there is a time when it can be foregone. But it's always, there's always two things about it. One, you cannot pull it out like a carpet from under other people's feet, as long as they're still believing in gods and goddesses and rituals, number one. Number two, you'll find out that that is Brahman, see. That you can start doing worship by offering flowers to images, and you'll have the highest samadhi doing that. All of a sudden you'll see the flowers Brahman, the images Brahman. You'll go into a high state of mind. Holy Mother experienced that herself. She said, I used to offer the food, prasad, right, that the devotees would eat. I used to offer it to the image of Sri Ramakrishna. I'd put it there and I'd wait. And when I saw a light come out of his eyes in the picture and touch the food, then I knew it was ready to serve to them. See? So she was having experiences of deep non-dual worship, if you want to put it that way. So all of this is very much in step with neti, neti, iti, iti combination. That's why I put this chart together, to try and bring out some of these facets. So let's return to our own abode, our eternal home in this respect, and start living this consummate life of homogeneity, you see, natural oneness, not something that ever was two. In fact, sometimes you'll have to say Brahman is one. Oh no, don't say that. Say it's not two, please. You see, because you don't want to limit it. Up you go, so that we took the Antakarna, that's inward you go, and you might as well take it up then to this highest thing. Now, if I were going to sing, and I am, about these two things, Abhava Yoga and Mahayoga, then I'd probably start with Mahayoga, and I'd give you a little demonstration of what it sounds like in music. Chahai so tu hai tujhse humne dil ko lagaya jo kuch hai so tu hai tujhse humne dil ko I want to sing the whole thing, but I'll pull back from that. This is Mahayoga, you see. It says, I have finally understood, O Lord, that everything exists in Thee. Every heart is ultimately united in Thee. Nothing exists but Thee. Jafar, this great devotee of God, sang this. Jafar, so much a combination of Hindu and Muslim. There are these great combinations of Hindu and Muslim in India because those two religions have lived side by side. In fact, I would say the Hindus are really the only race that can get along well with the Muslims. So it's true politically, but it's also true philosophically. So they've been living side by side, and of course it's not always wine and roses, but this is where you get these great hybrid souls that put together these non-dual teachings of the Vedanta with these beautiful, heartfelt renderings of Sufism, see, in Islam. So this would be an example of Mahayoga. Now, if I were going to suggest something out of the Abhava Yoga, which is more about this highest emptiness, let's see what I have here, because there are several good choices, then you'd probably have to sing something like this. Na punya na papam na saukyam na dukam na mantro na tirtam na veda na yagyaha aham bhojanam naiva bhojam na bhukta chidananda rupaha shivoham shivoham. So he sings. Neither right nor wrongdoing am I. So he takes morality and ethics and puts it in its place, you see. Neither pleasure nor pain. Takes that duality and unifies it. I'm not the mantra, the sacred place, the scriptures, nor the sacrifices. Neither the art of eating, the act of eating, the eater, nor the food am I. I am pure consciousness. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. And he goes on to say, death nor fear I have none, nor any distinction of caste. Neither father nor mother have I, nor even a birth. Neither friend nor comrade or disciple nor guru. I am pure consciousness, absolute. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. So both of these are fairly contemporary musical offerings, renderings of these, and they fit well with these two. So next time, you feel like a nut, eat an almond joy. If you don't feel like a nut, eat a mounds, as they say, you see. So philosophically speaking, there are these two high ideals, Abhava and Mahayoga. And you get to one through Neti Neti, and you get to the other through Iti Iti. But it doesn't mean at all that they're divorced from one another. That there are some great souls who, as Uddalaka was trying to do, gets to the Satya Samanya state, or this Turyatita, so beyond the beyond. And they're practicing the ultimate Iti Iti, but they're also coming to this realization, as Jafar says, that all this is, I see that all this is in you, Lord. See, he's putting it in a devotional way, but the way it's being expressed is a non-dual, in a non-dual fashion. So it's, and I quote my teacher, the best of India. Looked at me once and he said that. I sang these songs and he said, that's the best of India. Now, with our remaining time, which is close to a half hour, maybe we should read that final quote to do this chart up right. It says here, when the human being realizes the reality called Parabrahma in formless samadhi, the mentally projected phenomena of name and form and time and space disappears, demonstrating its ephemeral nature. If the fully awakened soul should return to embodiment after knowing the non-dual truth, however, the entire world reveals nothing but Brahman. So here you can put it in terms more of an understandable frame of time, network of time, is that consciousness tends to, either by practice or naturally, do away with the tattvas. Tattva Gyan. It realizes air, earth, fire, water, and ether is connected to tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, and smelling, that those 10 are connected to your same 10 in dream state, realizes those disappear in deep sleep state, gets the idea that everything is formless, enters into formlessness, and realizes Iti Iti, or Nirvikalpa. And then if it wants to come back out again, it just simply does the projection process, from cosmic mind down to individual ego, intelligence to ego to mind to tanmatras, subtle elements and subtle senses down to the gross senses, and produces the physical body, chooses the parent, gets into the body, and finds itself here again with all the time nothing has happened. It's just one state of consciousness entering two different modes. And no transformation has taken place. That's called aparinama. And one of the things Vivekananda brought that he wanted us to cut our teeth on, philosophically speaking, in the West, because we didn't have a non-dual philosophy here. We hardly had a religion here for very long. So aparinama means non-transformation. There is no transformation taking place ever, no matter what the appearance otherwise suggests. There's just one state of consciousness, and on the outside, like waves on an ocean, those waves are taking place, but at the depth there's nothing but homogeneity, one indivisible state of pure conscious awareness. So all transformations then, you could put it this way, if you see transformation taking place, you should probably think of the double helix of Maya. You should probably tell yourself, oh, I see, I have to be careful. I'm in the realms of name and form and time and space and karmas to pay. So I better be careful of that. If you don't see any of that, then you probably can say, I'm either in deep sleep or in samadhi, and I feel fine here. Thank you very much. Or as my teacher once put it humorously, no mind, no matter. No matter?
No mind.
Never mind. So that is how we take a deep look at Neti Neti that is being taught in one form or another to Shri Raama by Lord Vasishtha. It's one of these pure Vedantic ways that are unique to Vedanta and other systems of India too. But very difficult to find it, especially this well expressed outside of that subcontinent and its long history. Now, in the remaining time, let's take another look at that. And this might be the last chance we get to see one of Lord Vasishtha's teachings in this particular series. This is back to that idea of Puryastika body. Now, this was the story of Arjuna, because in order to teach the young Shri Raama about the presence of Maya and how to get rid of it, Lord Vasishtha entered into a bunch of stories. This is why Yoga Vasistha is rather Puranic. You see, it takes a kind of a station of the Puranas, because the Puranas are given mostly to people who can't understand the non-dual truths, so they give them these non-dual truths through stories. So it's kind of a tradition in India to do that. And if you can't just sit down with the non-dual truth and read it, and say, yes, I got that, you contemplate it and realize it, and there's too much in the way, too much karmic baggage or some scars in your mind and things to pay, then these stories are going to help you. So in this particular sense, they refer to Krishna and Arjuna, and Krishna is telling Arjuna about this experience, that how he comes into form through eightfold. That is, threefold mind and five senses. And all of those five senses, of course, connected to the five elements, so they're rather inferred. So this is one of the easier ways of understanding evolution and involution as it takes place in Indian philosophy. You could do the 24 cosmic principles and the 12 spandhas, and you could look at all these very much more in-depth, the quintuplication process we've talked about, and look at these much more in-depth ways. But the Purastika body is just kind of a simple way of putting it, that when the Lord takes a body, he does throw the soul through the mind, ego, thought, and five senses. That's his outer body. Puryastika means eight. So I have an eightfold body here. See, this is what I've taken on to get down to this level of consciousness. Now, I think there's enough time for it. I actually chose a selection, and you can follow the chart while I read it. And I'll kind of point it out to you, because in fact, maybe we should say that first. When the Jivatman, who is the dreamer, through the pure power of Sankalpa, because in order to take a teaching like that, remember you have to know Vasishtha's signature teachings. One of those is Sankalpa, mental projection. That there's no creation going on here. There's no transformation going on here. That's all apparent. That's all sleight of hand. It's all Maya's doing. There's one state of consciousness, and then there's a way of that gets projected into a sort of sportive play. And those beings who know it to be sportive play can withdraw from it as easily as they get into it. Those who don't fall into the sankalpic process that leads to ignorance of their true nature. Pretty much cut and dried as far as Vasishtha is concerned, and the easiest way of teaching it in his way of thinking. So how does it all happen? Arjuna wants to know, you see. So he wants to know, for instance, why if Krishna is coming again. And Krishna says, I've come many times, and so have you, Arjuna. We've enacted the battlefield of Kurukshetra thousands of times. So history repeats itself, we say here in the West. We don't know the half of it. You see, it repeats itself not just in this thin little veneer of a few centuries where human beings have appeared, but this whole thing is going on in cycles that roll on interminably forever. In other words, we're saying everything is, right? When you're saying everything is, you're saying everything is eternal. So this would have to mean Brahman's eternal. Well, that's not so hard. God's eternal. Okay, I can accept that. Soul is eternal. That's you. You're eternal. Okay, I hope so. Now, next thing, nature is eternal. That's interesting. What about when it disappears? See? Well, that's just its unmanifested state. That's its seed state. But it's still there. It'll turn back into forms again after it gives up the form, and that's called the cycling of nature. Here in the West, we only think of it as 4,320,000,000 years, or some big bang that happened and then an end. But in India, they know that this is going on again and again in cycles, in time, in kalpas, in yugas, in mahayugas, in manvantaras. They have it all mapped out. It's almost beside the point, you see, because it's just eternal. It just goes on all the time. And of course, there's a way off that wheel. That's another interesting facet of Indian thinking. So what else is eternal? This Maya, this name and form and time and space and causation. She's got to be there and for all of this to be happening. See, so the Tantrists describe Maya as she who covers your eyes with one hand and leads you on with the other. Or they describe Maya as the skin of a mango. It keeps the mango protected until it's ripe. But when it gets ripe, you strip the skin off and you throw it away. You don't eat it. Nobody eats the skin of the mango, right? In fact, you eat too much mango, you get a rash. So I would hate to see what the skin would do to you. So anyway, Maya is a rather a necessity for life. You see, it's not something that you can get rid of. It's something you can discriminate away with the neti-neti process, but good luck with that, because it persists all the way into your highest level of thinking. Because, say, heaven would be Maya. See, God in form would be Maya. See, Ishvara, the highest God in form, would be Maya. You see, because form isn't real. Anything that changes or appears in form is in the realm of Maya. So that only leaves one thing that isn't in Maya. Your own consciousness, you see. Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, Buddha nature, Pragyaparam. So that kind of Advaitic thinking then lies at the foundation of that. So if Jivatman the dreamer comes down with this power of Sankalpa out of Brahman and he forms the first thing, Vasishtha calls this ego the separate eye maker. You have to have an ego. Maya will help provide you with that. All the realms of name and form are waiting for you, but you have to separate yourself from Brahman to experience them. Right? So now we're coming down the scale rather than Udalaka going up it, right? So you're coming down the scale. How does the ahamkara actually get formed? I want to know the dynamics. I just can't accept that it's just all of a sudden, poof, I'm there and I'm a separate being, right? Something had to happen to make that. By belief in its own separate existence, Vasishtha tells Ram, or actually Arjuna tells Krishna. Krishna tells Arjuna, because you're talking about stories inside of stories when you talk about Indian itihasa. So Vasishtha is telling Ram about Krishna telling Arjuna about the ego's forming. That's what I'm saying here. So he says, by belief in its own separate existence. You have to believe that you're separate from Brahman in order for it to happen. Because why? You have this pure power in you to do that. You have the power to take on form. Don't forget the power to give it up. In other words, you made good introduction with Brahman, Lord Brahma, and you sported with Vishnu and played for a while, but you're not going to make friends with Shiva? Not a good idea. In fact, bad idea. You see? Even if Arnold Schwarzenegger has to become your Shiva, get a good destroyer behind you, you see. Because you need that power to destroy form, to get back to your true nature. Because true nature is not in form. See? Just pure and simple. We've already said that. I mean, this is the ground rules we've set up, right? So if you're going to accept this, then follow through on it and don't become unfaithful to the non-dual philosophy. Don't do it a disservice. Either believe it and follow it, or don't believe it and don't follow it, but no mixture in between, you see. You can't just have it your own way and then change it later on, you see. If you state these non-dual axioms, you've got to stick faithful to them. Okay, how about manas? What happens? We might not have time to read the selection, but I think this is more important. To the Jivatman dreaming, as it were, how does it create the mind, O Krishna? Through dual contemplation of itself. Mind is dual by nature then. Manas, I call it. What you want is non-dual mind. If thine eye be single, you shall know the truth, right? Not if thine eye be dual, you see. So anytime duality starts happening, you're being far flung from your true abode. O mind, return to your true abode, the song's saying, right? So if you've taken on 2 eyes and 2 nostrils and 2 ears and 2 legs and 2 arms and so forth, and you've taken on the Purastika body, which is 8-fold, then you're taking a journey away from your true self. Hopefully you know this, so that, and hopefully you might leave a trail of breadcrumbs for yourself, so you can get back, right? And hopefully the little birds of forgetfulness will not peck away at them while you're in form, you see. You'll be able to trace them, or connect the dots, if you will, back to your true nature. So by dual contemplation of itself, mind is born. First it has to think of itself as a separate existence, then it has to contemplate its own duality. You're like enforcing your own ignorance here. Through ignorance you're taking on the body and the worlds, because in Vedanta it's not all roses, you see. The world wasn't created out of love. It was created out of ignorance. So this is where a lot of people might part company with us, you see. This ignorance that created the worlds is root ignorance. It's avidya. God is not in the worlds. The worlds are in God. That's how Vivekananda put it. God is not in the worlds. The world is in God. See? So God is the one reality, and all this is play or sport. Or if it gets out of hand, it's suffering and chaos, you see, and ignorance. So are you going to call that God? Are you going to transgress the pure and perfect laws of Brahman? You better, stay specific to it, to the task, you see, of realization all the time. So contemplating your own separate existence, which is a lie, contemplating your own mind to make it dual, which is a facade, is how embodiment is taking place. And it explains everything that happens here in terms of suffering. See how valuable this is going to be for Ram to hear this again as a teenager from the lips of an illumined preceptor like Lord Vasishtha, when he's worried about the suffering of people outside the castle, you see. This is going to be very profound to have him read the story of Krishna Arjuna explaining this process. What about the buddhi, the intellect? Remember, we want to make sure to draw a distinction between intellect and intelligence. Intelligence with a capital I, according to Buddha, there's nothing higher than that. That's it. That's why he named himself after it. Buddhi means intellect, or intelligence. So this is, if we say intellect, we see a container has been formed to hold a little bit of intelligence in it. That's the intellect. It's a sheath. It's called the Vijnanamaya Kosha in Vedanta. So you have one of those, and you're piling knowledge into it, facts and figures, hopefully of the right kind, and also throwing some out once in a while, taking out the trash. See? Like old modes of thinking, like religious superstitions. So you bring some of the Vedanta in there, make a healthy intellect. So anyway, just a side stop for that. How does intellect get formed, this Purastika body? Via certitude of its own intelligence. Though here's a light in the darkness as far as I'm concerned. See, when you have certitude of your own intelligence, then you're at the controls of the Purastika body, which Krishna is. He says, I take on this body, and then I give it up. And when I do that, it's like scents moving in the air from different flowers. Nobody knows me. They don't see me doing it. They think I'm a form, he says in the Gita. But it's like fragrance moving from different flowers on the wind, you see. We all catch a whiff of God, but we don't know where he is or where he came from. like the musk deer running around in the forest catches a whiff of this musk, right? But it doesn't know it's coming from its own navel. See? It's running around the forest looking for that. But the essence is right there in its own self, you see. So the certitude of your own intelligence, that's going to be a very powerful thing to bring with you into the pure astika body. How about the five senses? The other three, 1, 2, 3, and 8. Can't read it there. They become such in awareness of the five elements. So they know that the five elements are potential within them, and they know that if they project the five elements, they can enjoy the earth. So the five senses are in cahoots that way. Mind, five senses, five elements. If you put those together, you've got lots of pleasure, lots of enjoyment. And you may be overlooking, the suffering that can come from that, the karma that can come from it. But nevertheless, that's where the pure astika body is headed, you see. It's where all of this is complex, this mental complex is coming together. The psychophysical being, they call it in Vedanta, or body-mind mechanism. Body is coming, you see. So all of this is good for that reason, to know how each thing is being produced or projected, as it were, but it's also good to know that everything comes from inside out, from Brahman all the way down, as it were, with mind in the middle as the hub, as the projector. It's another way of showing the mind-only school's way of thinking. So then to know the connection between the five senses and the five objects becomes clear to the mental complex. That is basically the Indriyas. You know how they're named in India. They're called Indriyas because Indra is the god of all the gods. So the Indriyas means little gods. See? So each one of the senses is a little god, and it presides over its own territory. The eyes, the tongue, the ears and so forth, the hands, they all have powers of their own. And if they aren't unified, they each take a different path, then there's chaos. Of course, that's a teaching in the Gita, the chariot with its 5 horses, right? And each horse wants to take its own way. The chariot is the mind, and the 5 horses the 5 senses. So if you can bring these 5 senses together, the power of the eye to see, the power of the ear to hear, the power of the hands to feel, and the feet to walk, and the tongue to taste, and so forth, and bring that back into the heart. That's the father of yoga's way of meditation. You may realize your true self with the combined power of the Indriyas. But if they're going out, you see, they're frittered away. All that energy gets frittered away, and by the time of death you cannot move back in. You don't have any power. That's why some illumined souls I've seen pass. A couple months ago, one of my teachers drug his old body to the river and threw it in. It's a monk. He gave up his body, and they had it on camera. He did it at 3 a.m, and they had it on camera because there were cameras mounted on the holy ground, mott grounds. See, so when this body's done, they'll toss it away. You see, they toss it off a mountain. They won't feed it, or they'll drown it in the holy river. That's the 3 ways, and there's one more, I think. Maybe burn it, at which a monk will give up his body. So we're coming to that, but basically these Indriyas, if you could pass consciously like that, or you can lay around and wait for death to come in your 90s. Or talking to a lady yesterday I was with a 99-year-old man, and he passed away 2 weeks ago, and I was with a 97-year-old man last week, you see, and she was telling me about how these people had been trying to die for a decade or so, or more. So if you don't have any power to give yourself up anymore, or let's put it this way, you can maintain the power to give your body up. It's called a conscious death. And according to Tibetan Buddhists, you have to have your first conscious death before you can have your first conscious lifetime. And when you have your first conscious death, these go away. You feel dryness of mouth, that's water and taste going away. You see. You have burning of eyes, that's fire and sight going away. When you have dizziness of mind and so forth, you see. So all of these things that happen to you are really the giving up of elements and senses and their conjunctions. The giving them up, you see. And it would have been nice if you had done this before you die, in meditation. See, that's what the Tibetans tell you. Janggang Khancho Rinpoche was a great Tibetan teacher, which I took teachings from, and he was saying that that's the ideal thing, is to give them up before, in meditation, before it gets to that. If it gets to that, hopefully you have a Rinpoche living in your back room, see, or in your hip pocket, you see. See. And he'll come and lead you through it, you see, guided death. But otherwise, you see, if you don't have any power left, then it's going to be very difficult for you to exit the body consciously. So in meditation you practice this. Last thing, and we'll have to end here, is how does the body come? By brooding on matter and objects. That should be rather evident to us, especially since so many people are rank materialists, as we would call them. They're not aware of the Great Soul, what the Great Soul thinks about objects, that you have to render them non-existent because they are. They're just swirling particles and they can't fulfill you. I mean, that's basically what you need to know about them. But you may have to prove that to yourself if you've fallen into such a condition where you believe the purostic body to be real. You can take it on and give it up as a sportive play. They call that lila, fine. But if you get into it and forget your roots, that's not acceptable for the realized soul. And probably not even for the sensitive sojourning soul. So with those last teachings of Lord Vasishtha to Shri Raama via the story of Krishna and Arjuna, let's end here with a chant. Om Sato, Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya, Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya, Abira Abira Mayeti, Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.